Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
Coaches and athletic directors, our sponsor Scoreboard Media has an incredible opportunity for your school. Right now, they're giving away 2 large LED video scoreboards, $152,000 value per school, to 32 select high schools across the country. Scoreboard Media pays for the boards, the software racks, and iPad controllers, as well as the delivery and installation. On top of that, they'll run the entire advertising program, generating a significant revenue sharing opportunity for the school. Since 2021, Scoreboard Media has been helping high schools upgrade their gyms and execute professional sponsorship programs. Not every school qualifies, and they're signing up new schools every week. So inventory is moving fast, and the install calendar is filling up for the summer. If you're interested, reach out to Scoreboard Media founder Charlie Megan at charlie@scoreboardmedia.com to set up a call and see if there's a fit.
But I don't think it was done terribly. I think I could have been more effective.
Is sometimes I've been able to talk to a lot of coaches now that I feel like do it really well and create a healthy environment for players to get to do both, do the things they want. Probably some of the biggest regrets in my life early on, or coaching life early on, was maybe not being the best for those athletes and not creating that environment. Your experience now is really unique because you went through it as a coach, but as you just said a second ago, you're coaching coaches now. How do you help your coaches that you're in charge of balance and create that environment that's best for multi-sport athletes?
Yeah, so this is, I would say this is a really hot topic, for all coaches, right? And we alluded to at the beginning, we're all constructing something. That we all have goals, ambitions. We're in this. 99.999% of people are in it for the right reason, and we're doing this. But this is an area that people can fail at unintentionally. I don't think anybody sets out to do this, but you get into year 3 and you need to, you get a little pressure. You need to win a little bit, and suddenly that kid that you might have pushed them to, hey, be involved in everything you can. Now that tone kind of changes with them a little bit. And so it takes a lot of effort as a coach. And I think it all goes back to that support that you have as a campus that you provide for your other sports. And then it needs to go both ways. If you want to see a kid be the most successful version of themselves, everyone has to be pulling the same direction. You can't have a coach on campus that in the meeting says they support 2-sport athletes or even 3-sport athletes or kids that do band or other extracurriculars. And then behind the scenes in a closed office, talk about if you want to make varsity, you're really going to need to, and then lay this framework for them that clearly sends the message that that kid needs to really specialize in order to make whatever goal they have for themselves, or putting that team pressure. If you want to do this, you're going to have to do some sort of checkbox that clearly tells them, hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to be a part of it, or you're risking it. And I think parents, have to understand this too. I've dealt with parents over the years that, you pour so much into a kid as you could go from volleyball to basketball to baseball. People spend a lot of money. They want that kid to reap the rewards of that. They don't want to risk it. And so all of that being said, I think when you talk about multi-sport athletes, basketball coaches can be just as guilty as anybody else of not really allowing their kids to do multiple things. And we've got to do that. At Brenham, we had just a great group of kids to come through, but our coaching staff, when I was an assistant coach, I witnessed this up front. Kids played 3-4 sports. And you as a coach have to be creative with your practice plan to allow those kids to do everything that they want to be a part of. And that may involve you opening up the gym a little earlier, if we're just going to talk basketball, or staying a little later, or letting that kid go from your practice to another practice and working hand in hand with that other coach. But over the years, the thing that I've often felt is it requires the coaches to work together. And I think clear communication with the parents that, hey, I am going to work with you. You don't have to fear that I'm going to keep your kid from being able to develop in other areas that they're interested in as well. But man, I coached so many guys through the years that did multiple things. And I take a lot of pride in that because I think there's this kind of a mindset from some coaches that it can't be done. You can't win. You can't be competitive if kids are playing football and basketball because you only see them this amount of time, or if they're going to baseball and you never have an off season with them. And you can, but you have to think outside of the box. And if you don't want to think outside the box, yeah, it might be difficult, but if you're willing to, it can work. But again, that relationship with that kid, that relationship with those parents, that relationship with that other coach of whatever sport or activity they're going to be part of, it's critical. You have to have that.
I think how we view that question of how we feel about multiple sport athletes or how we deal with them, I think it really reveals our why behind coaching. I'm not blind to see that in 5A TABS, the teams that are in the Final Four or the championship game or the team that wins it, they are typically straight basketball players. If they have some football guys, their straight basketball players are skilled enough to propel them. That's just the norm that I've seen. Like you said, though, it doesn't mean that you can't win. Midland Christian won, and they had either a starter or their sixth man was a football player, and he was really good player, and I think he's a pretty good football player too. Their straight basketball dudes were darn good.
Yeah.
And I've rarely seen a team that has mainly football players win or go to say that it's not possible. I don't think that's good, but I see that. And that's where I have the turmoil, or sometimes I wrestle the competitor that, coach, like before my time is done, I would like to win state. I'd like to win state as many times as possible and win every game that we play. But my why can't be about that. My why is that I want to use basketball and I want to use sport to influence our players for them to grow and to become the best men as possible. And so if that's the why and I care about them, then I can't get so bent out of shape about them wanting to do everything that they want to do. Even if I know that our overall success may differ at times, because of that. What we have to reject is coach speak. And that's what you were kind of talking about, is we know what the words and phrases that we can say. And then I wrote down too, it's not at all, I think, about what we say. It's actually all about what they believe. Because you could sit across the coach, I said, I don't mind if they play multiple sports. That's what you said, but what do they actually believe? And I think that coach speak is something that thankfully worked with PGC. I think they helped to eradicate a lot of that, even just straight basketball coach speak. But I think as a coach, like a great goal for us is everything we say has to be intentional, and we have to reject any of that coach speak. But sorry, I just kind of rattled or rambled there for a little bit. But it is something that, yeah, I struggle, but I'm trying to do my very, very best for the players and those individuals, but it is tough.
Yeah. And I think one thing that has to happen, you said it, our heart, I think I think for any sport, when for a football coach, if they have a kid that wants to play basketball, wants to play baseball, we're planning, right? We're trying to create our framework for what is going to propel us into the most successful version of ourselves the next season, whenever we get a chance to have these kids back. And so you have to battle, I think, just the selfish mindset of saying, okay, that kid's not going to get they're not going to be exactly right underneath my care during this time, but I have to trust and I have to work alongside that kid to get this accomplished. And I think, again, I kind of go back to that. That's where that communication piece, and I would talk to kids. If you're going to come from football to basketball, well, my expectation is if you make that team, that you're gonna invest in this. I'm not just asking you to. I would always kind of say, being a multi-sport athlete is not just wearing a uniform. It's an investment. And I've had some just amazing kids through the years that they would work their football stuff, and then They would come shoot with us in the mornings or after school, and then they'd go to baseball. And it is a mindset that the kid has to have. It's if you're going to be successful, those kids can't just come and be on the team. They've got to invest in being a part of the team, and that's when you can see success. But that's a rare mindset. But you do have to battle. You have personal ambitions. You want to win state. Generally speaking, you do have to have a core of kids in order to really have that chance, because I think the best teams have a mixture. They have a core group of kids, and if they're adding it some, those kids are walking into an established culture that they blend with.
Yeah, every team has their like it, love it, live it kids.
Yeah.
Every program has those. Your better years are probably where your love it kids, you have a lot more of them and they're pretty darn good. Or
Yeah.
even, and maybe one or two that actually live it, because really not that many live it. They say they do, but they really don't. But
Yeah.
you can do a lot with guys that love it. But then surrounding them are a lot of guys that may just want them to like it, like being in the gym. And if they are good athletes and they're good competitors, golly, they can do a lot. And we've had some great football players here that have impacted our teams quite a bit. But I don't want to sound like I defeated when or maybe I do sound that way when I think like this though. But if it is a year where not a lot of love it or live it guys that play straight basketball, a lot of guys that like it, but they're coming from different things, that may not be a year where we're outward of what the world sees as success, maybe in record and maybe in going deep. We may not be, but that doesn't mean that the season has to be a failure. And that doesn't mean that I have to coach them or build our culture with them in any different way. If anything, if we want basketball or any sport to be not the brightest spot in their life, but a bright spot when they're down the road, then I, as a coach, should not be resulting or basing everything that I feel about the year on the final result. If I am process driven, then what a great challenge to have a group of kids that like it, that have different basketball backgrounds, and we're going to try to come up with a style of play, and we're going to have a lot of joy and love playing together, regardless of what our record says. Maybe then you have those years sprinkled in depending on where you're at, especially when you don't have like 1,000 or 2,000 boys to choose from. When you got 125 to choose from or whatever, like you do your very, very best. But I think that's where, I don't know at what point that you get there, but coach, I feel like I'm getting there where I'm not going to say, oh, we just don't have a lot of basketball guys. It's going to be a hard year. Heck no. Like, let's make it work. Let's make it enjoyable. Like, can't never remember his name. The Saints coach from back in the day with Breeze. What was his name?
Peyton, Sean Payton.
Yeah, Sean Payton. They had a team that he thought could win the Super Bowl. And he said, that's not the goal. Here's the goal, guys. Let's enjoy every second that we're together this season. Let's enjoy every moment. That's a goal that we can all have, regardless of what happens on the floor.
Yeah, and this was I was having this conversation with Coach Plonk, our athletic director here, head athletic director, the other day, talking about how important when you have a kid come from football or go from basketball to baseball, how important it is to create a transition time that connects them to the goals that you have for that next season. When they're coming from football, they've gone through a long season. A lot of times they're coming to you in November, and if you had a great season, you might get them early December or mid-December. But they've been doing that since July. And mentally, the capacity that as a person, you get fatigued. I know that when I coached football, and I just coached freshman football, but I helped out with the varsity for preparation and breakdown. Um, I was tired, and I wasn't the one that was having to process all of the information on a day-to-day basis and the expectations. And so when you get them, I think one thing coaches could do, if they want to maximize it, they have to understand those kids need to be mentally acclimated to the framework that you have that exists in your program, what you want for them. And you've got to give them some time. You've got to build in easy wins for them from a practice standpoint. I'm not saying take it easy. You demand them. You have your standard you want from them. But I think I've seen what we always felt like as a coach, and this is where I really got this in Brenham, is when we would get those kids. One year we went to the state championship in football, lost to Aledo, heartbreaker. almost won the thing. Just crazy. It was just chill bumps thinking about it. And that was 2008 or 9, somewhere in there. Those same kids, most of them come over to basketball, and we were FA when it was 4A, 5A. And those same kids took us to the regional semifinals in basketball. And then a few of those kids went on and played on the state championship baseball team. And it was just, what we felt was, it wasn't just that those kids they were very talented, but we always felt if we could just get these kids to New Year's, if we can get them through the Christmas break to where they're going to have a chance to reset, and you've got to schedule creatively. If you know that you're going to have a lot of kids coming over, you don't want to demoralize them. You need to give them something they can grab a hold of to be able to climb up with you. And we felt like if we could keep it positive and headed in the right direction with good scheduling, practices that were demanding but also understanding of that we needed to simplify some things, make it palatable processing, help them to play as fast as they could play while executing what we wanted to do. We felt like we could have success. And I think that's something that if coaches could just understand, just get them to the important time of the year, and then they're engaged and they're invigorated, and they could breathe life into your program.
Man, some really good reminders right there. And I think this is, whether we're talking about football players coming over or not, let's make it fun. Let's make practice fun. I think if anybody was to come to, and I don't get a lot of takers on this, if anybody was to come to a Grapevine Faith workout, my hope is that they would see a group of guys active, working really hard, but having a ton of fun. And I think fun doesn't mean that you're not a serious coach or a serious program. I just try to look at, like, what's my way of getting the most out of them? Is it going to be because they have to do something, or can we make it a way where, man, they want to do this, they get to do this? And I think that's a great way to look about it, whether it's football guys coming over or not. But then I think you're also right on the money with being really smart with the breaks that you take, with the tournaments that you play, with the schedule that you have. I'm not for just scheduling fluff, but I'm also not for beating kids down thinking we'll make them tougher through losses. I just don't know if that's true, that you really make kids tougher by getting their heads beat in every night. I'm not talking about losing by 2 or 5 or 10, but you lose by 30 or 40 playing somebody that you're just not prepared for, but you think you're making them tough. I've seen confidence, I've seen rhythm, and I've seen engagement increase through wins. And I'm not saying you just go schedule fluff, but I do think you take a really good look at knowing your team, knowing what you have coming back, knowing who you're waiting on, and the impact that they'll have. I think you got to be smart there, Coach.
Yeah, you're right. You have to, the scheduling portion of it, you have to be smart. You got to know what you got coming back. You've got to know your strengths and weaknesses, and you've got to be realistic, but not, like, as you said, fluff. Is it going to help you to play, 5 games against teams that just had no chance against you? Well, you've got to kind of find that in between. You do need some of those confidence builders, and then you do sprinkle in, and I think good coaches know this. You sprinkle in a competitive game, and you're going to inevitably run into someone at a tournament that's going to challenge you, and they might, put a whooping on the team. But I think you can always gauge it year to year. There was a few years towards the end where those kids, they wanted to play as hard of a schedule as possible, and so I was never I didn't want to shy away from that if I felt like they wanted that, if they could
Yeah.
handle that. But I think that's case by case, and you've got to know the kids. But I think, again, whatever it takes to keep them interested until those games really matter in your conference, or your district play, and then getting them to the playoffs. And then when you're to that point, man, wild things happen in the playoffs. They do. So you got to
Yeah.
just give them the opportunity, give those kids a chance.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.